I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Peters Township Planning Commission, January 16th, 2020. Roll call.
Mr. Salepis will not be here tonight. Mr. Cartophilis?
Here.
Mr. Wiley? Here. Mr. Magrino?
Here.
Mr. Mills?
Here.
Mrs. Corbel?
Here.
Did I say it right?
Corbel, yeah.
And Aaron Smith will not be here tonight.
This being our first meeting of the year, this is our reorganization meeting. Our first order of business will be a nomination and election of chairman. I'd like to nominate Mr. Aaron Smith, although he's not here this evening.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is the nomination and election of vice chairman. May I have any nominations?
I'll nominate David Wiley.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Designation of an alternate signee of plats for 2020. Do we have any?
I would be happy to, if anybody wants to nominate me.
I nominate Dave Wiley.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That brings us to establishment of the regular meeting dates and time for 2020. And we've been doing the first Thursday, second Thursday of the month
At 7
7
p.m.
o'clock. I don't think there are any comments, any questions, discussion? No, that's good. Maintain that. Special meeting date and time for 2020.
Usually it's the fourth Thursday of the month at 7 p.m.
Any discussion?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. And a planning commission appointment to the traffic calming committee.
I nominate Aaron Smith to that.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Boy,
Aye.
he's not here tonight.
That's what happened.
Conrad was the rep in 2019.
On there?
We can change that if you guys, if there's a problem. But for now, we'll keep it Aaron.
With that, should we switch? We have to close the meeting, or we just go into?
You could just switch.
Okay. I'll take
Good.
Yeah.
Do you want to switch seats, or just want to have the gals?
I'll just stay right here.
All right.
All right.
We don't have to do the roll
We don't
call.
need the roll call, so let's have approval of minutes. We have a motion for those last minutes.
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
Those minutes second. Can I hear approval? All approved?
All
Aye.
right.
Reports and correspondence, Ed.
None that I need to point out.
And are there any site plans or subdivisions that have been filed?
None.
All right, we have an agenda, a short one. Is the agenda changed?
Has not.
Anything added? Okay. Are there any audience comments tonight? Not relegated to the agenda. All right, not hearing any. We don't have any old business. Therefore, the new business is only one item, Planning Commission conditional use recommendation for 519 Properties, LLC, request to develop an office warehouse at 430 Venetia Road.
This is a Planning Commission recommendation on a conditional use application. So I'm going to go through some important information here. The applicant is 519 Properties, LLC. They're located in Canonsburg. Their status as an applicant, they are the owner of this property, and they purchased it in April of 2017. The property is located at 430 Venetia Road. It's known as Lot B of the Venetia Industrial Plan, which was recorded in 1992. Property size is 1.826 acres. The property is zoned West Venetia Road mixed-use corridor, and that was adopted under Ordinance 657 in November of 2005. Prior to the current zoning of mixed use, it was zoned light industrial up until that point. The requested action tonight is for conditional use approval to develop 430 Venetia Road for an office warehouse project. Office warehouse in this zoning district, in our zoning ordinance, is classified as a conditional use. The adjacent zoning and uses. To the north, as you can see, across Venetia Road from this site is the The zoning there is woodland protection, and that's the Great Meadows, single-family residential neighborhood. To the south of this property it's land in Nottingham Township. That property in Nottingham is zoned R3 multi-suburban residential. Behind there is the Nottingham Township border, B&O Railroad, and the actual Peters Creek runs along the back portion of the property. To the west is Lighthouse Electric's facility. They have a large office warehouse, logistics operations there.
That's 420?
Yes.
That's 420.
Yep. And to the east is a wholesale landscape supply facility. I forget the name of it.
Is it Lynch?
Landscape.
It's not Lynch anymore.
Venetia
That's
Landscape
what
Supply.
it's called, the sign still says that, right?
I think they changed the name.
Venetia
They
Landscape.
did.
Okay.
So I didn't want to say Lynch, but it used to be owned by Lynch. Do we know the name of that?
Venetia Landscape Supply.
Venetia Landscape Supply? Utilities. All utilities are available to this site, including public water and public sewer. This property is in the Peters Creek Sanitary Authority service area. Physical characteristics of the property, it's a vacant piece of property right now, and they did get an HOP, and they have paved that driveway connection to Venetia Road. Other than that, it's vacant. It gently slopes. It's fairly level, considering we're in Peters Township, Western Pennsylvania. The rear portion of the property is located in a floodplain, 100-year floodplain. So the half of that property is in the floodplain. Applicable zoning regulations. As I said, this area is zoned mixed-use corridor. In section 400, we have the specific area and bulk requirements for that zoning district. You know, the setbacks, building height, floor area ratio, all those criteria apply. In addition to that, in our zoning ordinance in section 440-601, we specifically have criteria in that section for an office warehouse. So you see in my report, there's items under 440-601, conditions A through J. Those are specific conditions that this site plan, this operation, this proposed use would have to comply with all those specific criteria in that section. Planning staff has met with the applicant. We've gone over those 10 conditions, and none of those conditions pose any issue to the proposed applicant's use.
And those remain ongoing, like the chemical thing?
Ongoing, and fire department inspections, all those conditions apply throughout the entire site plan approval, and even when the buildings, even if this project would be built and improved, those conditions apply. So the applicant has filed all the proper applications with the township for conditional use. Council has set Monday, January 27, 2020 as their conditional use hearing date. All property owners within 600 feet of this subject site have been notified of this proposed conditional use request, and the public meeting dates, tonight's meeting as well as the January 27th public hearing. We sent those notifications out in early December. We have not had anyone even come in to look at the plans or even ask any questions. This conditional use stage that we're in right now provides the Planning Commission and Council an opportunity to review this proposed developments, conceptual plans, conceptual building elevations, and establish conditions above and beyond what we have set out in Section 601. These conditions that Planning Commission and Council will ultimately set, those conditions guide the final site plans that will have to come back to Planning Commission and Council for approval. As stated earlier, this is zoned mixed-use corridor. The Peters Township current comprehensive plan, Plan Peters 2022, which was adopted in December of 2013, did not recommend or propose any changes to this area of Peters. That comprehensive plan maintained the existing mixed-use zoning district that is along this stretch of Venetia Road. Again, office warehouse is a conditional use. I just wanted to point out that a conditional use is an authorized use within this zoning district. It's an authorized use within the zoning district, and that only council can approve this subject to the conditions that the Planning Commission recommend and council will ultimately establish. We have, as part of their application, they provided us conceptual site plans. We've reviewed those site plans with our township engineer, Gateway engineers. We've reviewed them with the Harshman CE group, the applicant's engineers. You can just flip to those. They're showing us that they can develop the site with, multi-buildings for office warehouse purposes in compliance with all our mixed-use zoning district requirements, setbacks, buffers, parking. These conceptual plans are in enough detail to show us that they can develop the site in accordance with those regulations. Let's see if there's anything else important in here.
And what's that building like off to the side?
That's an old house. To the left there, you mean?
No, at the bottom, like right back by the tracks, in the other view, you can see it. Is there a need for access to that? It looks like it's on the... Yeah,
Just
right there.
It's just a shed, and that's on the property adjacent.
Yeah.
Oh, it is
so
on
it
the
is
property?
part of that
Oh,
property?
okay.
Right down the middle.
Okay.
Half of it was Dave Lynch's and the other half belonged to Bossie's.
Okay. What is that building?
We used to have a pony.
Just a shed?
Used to have a pony. A little barn.
Okay.
Oh, so that diagonal line's not a property line, that little wedge is not another piece of property?
That property line looks like it's off. That's off of our GIS
Right
system.
through the middle of the building.
So, it's time for staff to make a recommendation, and it's staff's opinion that this proposed office warehouse project at 430 Venetia Road is compatible with the adjacent land uses. In addition, it's a low traffic generator and should not adversely affect any adjoining properties. Planning staff's recommending that the Planning Commission recommend to council that the applicant's conditional use request be approved, subject to those 10 conditions in section 601. In addition, we're proposing 4 additional conditions, and I want to walk through those real quick. The site layout provide the Peters Township Fire Department access to the rear and sides of the building, or all buildings be equipped with a fire suppression system. Fire department wants access. If they don't have access, then they're going to want it sprinkled. So we'll have to work with them on their final site plans to ensure that the fire department's satisfied. As part of the other fire department request was a public fire hydrant be installed in accordance with Peters Township Fire Department location requirements. There's not a hydrant that could service the building that would be furthest back on the site, so they want to put another hydrant in there. Condition 4, the exterior building materials on the front, side, and rear facades when facing Venetia Road, the interior of the site or a residential district shall be faced with brick, stone, or other suitable building materials as approved by Planning Commission Council. Did we have the elevations here? They're showing us elevations of, 90% metal buildings. We're not comfortable with that, and we want them to look at maybe beefing up the look of these buildings. And we think that condition is flexible enough to give them some opportunity to look at materials and maybe use a combination of brick, stone, and metal. We're just asking them to take another look at that. And condition 5 is this conditional use approval is for concept only and not any specific site plan or building design. A complete site plan must be submitted in accordance with all township requirements and be approved by Planning Commission and Council. With that,
Would that have the traffic impact fee on
yes,
during site plan?
correct. And we,
Depending on how many buildings they build and whatnot.
what size?
Do we know what the proposed use is?
They don't have any specific tenant at this time, but they've informed the township that they're looking at, plumbing contractors, electrical contractors that need space for their supplies, and they have no specific tenant at this time.
Is there a representative from or anybody wants to be representing the applicant?
Yeah.
Yeah, in case we have questions just like that.
Thomas Helmkamp with the Harshman City Group. So, as Ed said, we don't have any specific tenants in mind, but again, small contractors are kind of the main focus. Looking to see if we can get some small local guys in there that need space for equipment, for materials. In our meeting, we reviewed that. Everything has to be inside, vehicles, equipment, etc. No storage outside, which is fine. That's not a big deal. There's enough space in all these buildings to house enough equipment and materials to not have to utilize the outside space.
And from that schematic there, being about the fire company, would that, from your knowledge, planning staff's knowledge, would be okay for the fire company, or does that have to be modified?
Well, the one we're looking at here is getting closer to what the fire department wants in terms of access around the buildings without them being sprinkled. The first one that we looked at, Seth, you can flip back, they're not comfortable with that without those buildings being sprinkled because they don't have access between the buildings or to the rear of those buildings.
And previously, this was a industrial park back before 2005, or industrial, light industrial?
Correct.
Yeah. It's interesting that nobody has come into your office or called about this, so that's probably logically a good thing.
It's very unusual, I would tell you.
Yeah, it is unusual this day and age.
So primarily, this is the consideration is that these would be storage buildings. This is some sort of storage, not office.
Mostly, yes.
Okay. And the reason I ask is because it seems like, is there a reason that 6 parking spaces were kind of identified or designated? Because I'm just thinking that if you have a whole bunch of equipment being stored there, and then somebody has to drive their car to pick up that equipment and take it out, where's everybody going to park?
Chime in for just a second.
Yeah.
Jamie Harshman. Mr. Beers was telling me one of their primary markets for these type of buildings are the type of small contractor who might be trying to operate out of their home. You've got a lot of contractors who they drive their truck home at night, they're working out of their basement, whether they're allowed to or not, they need to move to the next step, which would give this building the type of space they would need. There's a small office area in it, and there's a large open bay where they can bring their truck in, keep their equipment, tools, and such inside. So as far as the number of parking spaces, there's a lot more area on there than the lines that we have striped.
Okay.
The lines we have striped are a little bit more than the ordinance minimum. So the point of this plan was to show you that we could meet the Peters Township ordinance requirements, and then also there's still some elbow room there. So if you did have extra people that came, or guests, or another car, or whatever, there's lots of room on the site. Also, Mr. Wiley, to your point about the fire department access, the initial plan that we turned in was this plan, and then after consultation with Peters Planning and the fire department comments, the second plan, those are the same buildings, but we've adjusted them to provide a full fire lane width between each building so that in the event these buildings are not sprinklered, they have sufficient fire department access. We also show adding a hydrant at 3 entrances to the property. So we've got public water along the street. We're going to put a fire hydrant in when we bring the water service into the buildings. And in the event our client would choose to sprinkler the buildings, there's water service there to do that. But we did want to provide a layout to show planning that we could, in fact, provide the fire lanes around the building. So those are the 2 conceptual layouts that you have there. Sorry, Thomas.
No, you're good.
Any other questions from the planning?
I just want to be sure there's no storage outside, specifically in the floodplain area and around the buildings.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the conditions in the conditional use and in the zoning itself. So, yeah, that's something that comes with the building in the territory. So
Okay.
And is there like a buffer across the road there to,
there's a 100-foot buffer between the residential area and the front side of the building. So the edge of the building is actually right on that 100-foot line. And we're meeting the 25-foot setback, obviously, off the road. So the way the buildings are oriented, they meet all the buffer requirements for the zoning areas.
And there still has to be like a landscaping plan or whatever and all that?
That'll be part of the conceptual, the final plan. But we have some landscaping shown along the roadway in that area, which does meet the current buffer area.
Landscape. That's called out as a buffer area A, and the trees and shrubs you see sketched on there are the planning schedule off the buffer area A. So that's the green space between the building and the road frontage.
So they would go all the way along the whole place? It looks like they stop at the building.
Well, unfortunately, we can't do any buffering between the warehouse buildings and the adjacent use because we have a significant amount of utilities.
Oh, yeah.
You have sanitary, you have electric, you have water, and you have the stream that's running between the properties there.
Oh, yeah.
So there's some existing buffer along the roadway, about 80, 90 feet back.
Do you think you'll put windows in the office, particularly in, I'll call it building one that's closest to the road?
That's something we'd have to look at.
Maybe consider it. I don't think it's necessary to put a condition.
Something that can be considered depending on who's going in there and what the use is, but at this point.
I don't think they want windows in these buildings, really just for security reasons, and certainly not on the roadside.
Isn't there an elevation difference between the road and where the asphalt would be here on this?
Yeah, the site sits about 6 feet lower than the road.
Right.
And the buildings are how tall? Conceptually, is there?
We said about 14 feet. Yeah, they're 14 feet to the joist, so to the top of the gable, we're looking roughly 20 feet, which is well below the limits for the area, which I believe is 45 feet.
22 feet to the peak of the roof, 16-foot eve, 14-foot doors.
And is there any concern with, as far as the difference between it being used as a storage facility where then if any activity was going on, it would be outside the building versus operations being conducted within the building and that creating a noise issue? Just thinking for this as a conditional use. If you think on either side of it, I'm thinking about, I know it's not what you guys are thinking right now, but I'm thinking about somebody that's a car repair and then there's
Car repair would not
welding or there's repairs or there's anything like that being inside. Would we need to include that as a conditional use or would that just be part of the noise ordinance?
It's already in there.
Okay.
There are certain uses that are not permitted in the area.
I know it says excessive noise, but
No, there's language in there in the supplemental regulation that says all business activities must take place inside. So
Well,
No, I understand that, right.
Plus, we have rules with respect to noise that would come into play, that would, if there's noise occurring inside a building that's disturbing the neighborhood across the
Right.
street, we have rules that would come into play that we could enforce in our existing zoning.
okay. And do you think that H, where it says all aspects of the operation shall take place indoors, is specific enough versus saying including parking and storage of vehicles, equipment, and materials?
I like to add that. We could add that. I think that's a good add.
Because operations to me
Say it again.
seems-
How would you add to
I
that?
would say including storage of equipment, vehicles, and materials. Just from a construction standpoint, a lot of times there's, things being brought in, and you wouldn't want somebody thinking they could dump their gravel there for a few weeks at a time, or if you're talking about a contractor potentially.
That's part of the zoning district already, that there's no storage outside, period. So
That would include that, but I like being clear
Just to
on
be
it.
specific about it.
Including vehicles, equipment,
And vehicles, equipment,
and materials. Do you have a problem with that? We could modify and add to condition H in 601.
Yeah.
And there's also a lighting plan required, right?
That'll all come
With the
next steps.
building.
Landscape, lighting, stormwater management, E&S.
right now the
Sewage.
plan is to have all the lighting on the buildings, so that'll come off the building, so we don't have to have poles or anything like that. We don't have to worry about pole heights, etc. So everything's contained on the building side. There should be enough lighting for the parking on the opposite side coming off the buildings. Obviously, all the shielding and everything that's required for the zoning district will be abided by.
Any other questions from the commission? Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak? I think you guys are all together, but you're welcome to. Nobody? Any more from, no questions? All right, may I hear a motion perhaps?
I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend approval for the conditional use of 519 Properties LLC office and warehouse project at 430 Venetia Road, contingent upon satisfying, I believe it's the 11 conditions identified within the staff memo of January 9th, 2020, modifying condition H to including storage of equipment, vehicles, and maintenance.
Materials.
Materials, excuse me. Thank you, materials. And then also adding, I believe it was three additional conditions added?
Four.
Four additions.
There was the requirement for each building to have fire access on 3 sides.
Now, I would just say conditions,
Was this all in there?
1 through 5?
it would be actually 2 through 5.
2 through 5.
Yes, and then the staff planning commission recommendations, 1 through 5, is enumerated on page 3 of 3 of the January 9th, 2020.
That works.
Second. We have a motion and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Good luck. Thank you.
So on Monday, January 27, we have the council public hearing. Our report will be updated. I'll email it out to you guys tomorrow. But, the 27th is at 7:30 here on Monday, the 27th.
If your office requires anything before that meeting, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay, good luck, guys.
Thank you very much.
Planning portion. Is there anything anybody wants to bring up, staff or commission?
Talk about the Pooch Pit. Did you see the Pooch Pit decision was appealed by the neighbor behind?
No.
No.
So, what's that? We'll see.
We have not got a hearing date yet.
Okay.
We just-
Signed to? What judge is
I
assigned to?
I know in the sense that I have the paper downstairs, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Emery?
Yeah, I'm right.
Okay.
Any other planning issues or things to discuss?
Not that I
Okay, hearing none, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.